All right, another great podcast. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do the NUC sports intro because I think I'm going to eventually maybe because we're not running as many events anymore. I may
Now
just
we should probably tweak it.
yeah, like the Coach Schuman brand might be bigger than the NUC sports brand. Like like the NUC sports brand used to be so much bigger than I guess.
Yeah,
I
but
guess we're in
that's
the
also
era.
when you were running. That's also when you were running, 250 national camps a year.
Yeah, it's a well. Plus, it's also before the era of really personal brands became a bigger thing.
Oh yeah, it was group. Like there was no individuality
There's no
in that market.
Nah, there wasn't. So, but it's funny because every time I put that like little, and you see
It gives
sports,
you a little flashback. It gives you a
people are
little like,
probably like,
oh,
people are like, what is even in that? Is that anymore? But we got a great podcast on today. We last week, we talked a lot of speed and speed in sports with Tony Holler. This week, we're going to talk a lot about training, development. You guys work with NFL players, really a fast rising star in I guess you could call it the sport strength conditioning industry, but really, in high level development of athletes. Joey Taggart. We'll talk a little about his fun nickname as well, and but yeah, he's really doing some great things. He's rising really fast. I now you could correct me, Derek, if I'm wrong, but he's with Iron Culture. Is that the
yeah, I believe that's where he's kind of linked up. He'll talk about a little bit more like where he actually bases his work out of. He loves looking across that river at the city. That's one of his things. You know what I mean? So and look, you know that market. He's a younger guy. He's like I said, like you said, he's up and coming. He's really branded himself and put himself in a position to be, successful in a highly competitive market, especially with someone that's really kind of just bursting onto the scene. He really kind of got his start with Parisi. And, so he'll talk about that a little bit, and then can kind of just go into kind of how his model and how he does things a little bit different. So I'm excited to talk to it, especially staying on the same track after just talking to Tony, kind of hearing another perspective. They kind of have a common clientele in terms of, high level performance guys. So I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Let's bring him on. What's going on, Joey?
What's up, fellas? Appreciate the intro.
All right, buddy. Back it up now.
Well, you're a Butler guy, so let's start off with that real quick. Okay,
bro, he gets that. Listen, this guy, he's a Saddlebrook guy, so he grew up kind of the same way we did. But every time I have a Butler guy on here, it's like so. You got to back that up.
I call it the Butler Network now. Before at the beginning, I was like, "Oh, there's some guys from Butler," and now I'm calling it the Butler Network. I said, "You guys need your own Instagram page where you're just posting like things that Butler guys are doing. Like so and so is coaching over here. This guy's running this. This guy's doing this." I think it's pretty cool. Actually, the truth is, it's pretty cool that like you guys are all stay connected, and I think that's one of the beauties of a small town.
Yeah. It's one of the perks.
There's a lot of downsides to a small town too, right?
Oh yeah.
When you're in a downtown small town, if you're kind of looking to do something, you're always trying to get out. But
yep.
But you don't realize there was also a beauty of it too at the same time because you guys are all interconnected. You don't realize that till later, I guess. Actually.
Yeah, the network that it creates, and you saw it firsthand when we had Coach Mickens on, and before you know it, it was like Butler this, Butler that, and it was just like the amount of views and stuff blew up because it was just Butler people like, oh, somebody's recognizing our little hometown. So it's definitely a network that's a positive thing.
Tell everybody your background so we can really kind of we'll roll from there. We introed you, but really. How you got to where you are today, kind of, the roots of everything and what you're doing now.
So right now, I'm basically, simplified as a personal trainer. I work with athletes from youth to high school, college, NFL. And then I also work like with your general population for one-on-one, whether you're adult, boot camp, small group training. I started, I grew up in Butler with Derek. I grew up with him, his family. We were playing sports together. He was a little bit older. My high school, I basically ended with sports in high school. I had like a very close family member of mine who passed away in a car accident the day after my 17th birthday. And that kind of was like a spiraling effect for me. I took that very hard and kind of threw away like my path of playing collegiate football. I had the opportunity, but I took it very hard and basically just threw it out the window. And then fast forward, 2015, I got an opportunity to interview at Parsi Speed School. I met with Rich Sadib and Bill Parisi, another gentleman, Craig Stoddard. After 2 interviews, they hired me. I accepted the job, and then from there, it kind of just skyrocketed. Derek says, you guys kind of mentioned like fast riser. I've been doing this for a little over 10 years now. But when people see me now, they kind of look up, they may just know me now and look at it as like overnight success. But I feel like I'm just getting started, and I've been doing it now for 10 years. So it's pretty cool to see where it all kind of unfolded. You guys actually had like a mentor of mine, Mike Smith, on here, who big part of Derek's life. Mike's the one who kind of kept me on the straight and narrow throughout high school. I was a very good skier. I won my first competition as a freshman in high school. I won a couple $1,000s. Back then, you couldn't accept money. So I had the opportunity, I either could accept the money, but I could never play high school sports because I was considered a pro, or give the money back. And, at 14 years old, you win your first competition, you're ready to run with that money and chase it. But Mike, talked me off the ledge and was like, listen, he's like, if you're that good, you'll have that opportunity when high school is done. You have some talent as a football player. I recommend staying in. And, we locked in that offseason. He was my freshman football coach at Butler. And then he was like my first one kind of exposing me to speed and agility and performance training. And that's kind of really where it all started for me.
Really interesting. And now was I right in the place that you're at as far as the facility that you work out of?
So I'm no longer with Iron Culture.
Okay.
I'm not. I was with them up until about January. I'm currently working independently. Out of Paramus, but I do training down here in Edgewater. Derek's 100% right. I love looking across that river. Nothing motivates me more than that city. It's just endless opportunity. Doesn't matter what time of the day. It just shows you that, no matter how far you are, there's so much more you can go. And, nothing motivates me more than that. It's not money. It's just more about endless opportunity. And that's what it's all about, and creating a platform to help these kids really, even the adults, but more so me. If it wasn't for Mike, he I just talked to Mike yesterday, and he doesn't even realize the impact he had on my life. But
he doesn't, not for any of us, dude. He doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't get it for any of us. It's just not who he is. He's just not that person. He's not a pat on the back type of guy. But the things that he's done for all of us in their own way, shape, or form, we can't put it into words, and he'll just never get it. Because it's just not who he is.
Yeah, and looking back at it now, it was such a huge part of my life to really. It took me a while to get my shit together. Don't get me wrong. But when I did, it's a big part of what he did for me. And at this point, it's just all about creating a platform to pay it forward, to give back to the kids who are in my position, who were in my position 15, 20 years ago. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. And Edgewater, that's where we are now. I used to coach.
I knew that was.
I connected with a lot of people there.
I knew it was coming.
Love that. Let's go.
With a lot of guys that are connected to all their youth programs down there. So
yeah, I feel like even though you're in a bigger city area, down here is still very similar to a small town feel.
Edgewater is.
You get connected, you're in with everybody, but it's hard to get in that network. That's for sure.
I know. I was Derek probably knows. I was the head coach of Powell Park, Leonia, from 2000. 2008, I think, through 2014, and we went to the state championship, and we were the worst program in the state of New Jersey, and then we basically built it up, and we ended up going to state championship, and at one time won 17 and 19 games in over 2 years, and a lot of those kids were Edgewater kids. And because they went to Leonia, Edgewater goes to Leonia, and those guys now they're great guys. They're great guys, and they're running they run flag football leagues down there in Edgewater. They run they run them together. These are the guys that played for me, and they now they have. I don't know what they do during their day jobs, but they work in business, but they have all these programs they run within the youth down there. And they're pretty connected down there. And they're all friends from when they all played on this team. They're like one of the few guys that have had success in that area in football. You know what I mean? It's like a group of like 25, 30 guys that played over those years that were all good. And now they're I didn't know this till a couple years ago, but they're running like flag leagues. They're doing all kinds of different stuff. I don't know exactly, but I'll connect you. I'll connect you to the guy who will know all the guys that are, if he's not doing it himself, which he probably is, some of the like flag leagues, but they're all interconnected there. So, and then they cover Leone and Pal Park too, which is right in that same exact area. And then obviously, all the towns that are right around that area. But,
well, like you said, it's kind of like a small town feel still, right?
It is.
And those guys all played together, so now they're just staying in the network. And then, one guy talks to another guy, and it's like, hey, if I'm going to do anything with anybody, I'm going to do it with somebody that I, played ball with, or I went to battle with. So that interconnection stuff, that's always kind of part of it. And, the name of the game is network, right? Like, it's who you know, and it's kind of just how you get your foot in the door, and then it's that opportunity, you just take it and run with it.
Yeah, no, it's great. So talk about, so you've trained in a lot of different, you're running the gamut, right? Talk about some of the things philosophically that you're seeing and that you like to do as far as from a development standpoint for athletes.
Well, when I got started at Parsi Speed School, so from speed, I've learned, from the best, Rich Sadiv, Bill Parisi, and then the network that Bill Parisi brings to that franchise is huge. And then when it comes down to like positional work, I really learned that from like Mike. He's phenomenal when it comes to positional work and agility. But now like the biggest thing with me is it's the basics. So many people, especially with Instagram now, I hate to say it, but like they go even just straight to positional work or all these fancy drills, and they can't even master the foundation, right? So like, no matter what, I always rely on your overall just basic speed work, right? From acceleration to top speed. I think that's so crucial. It doesn't matter what level you're at, whether it's a youth athlete, high school, college, NFL. I think that always has to be a staple in your workouts. And then from there, you kind of, if you're at the NFL level, you're more fine tuning. If you're at the youth level, you're developing. But I'm a basics guy when it comes to the weight room and when it comes to the speed work as well. I believe it aids and plays a big part in injury prevention or, reduction of injury. But that's where I'm at. I mean, some of these kids, like I'm starting to realize, because I've gone through my first cycle now of having, a kid from like 8th grade freshman year now drafted into the NFL, so going through that, some of these guys, they start with me and then they fade off and come back. But I think what it realizes is like, they're always thinking like the grass is greener. Like there's all these other fancy drills they're missing out on, but then they realize like it's not. Matter. And if they do get exposed to that, they realize it's not
smoke and mirrors, bro. Smoke and mirrors.
So, being a basics guy, I think it hurts me, but at the end, in the long run, it really helps me. One thing that I would say is like, I'm more consistent than 95% of the trainers out there. And that's really what's helped me get to where I am today, between being consistent, reliable, and then being able to grow a network. Like, I guess my bartending days have really allowed me to talk and network with everybody. So, that's really just a big part of it.
Yeah. Well, those truth is those skill sets are part of being, a good people person. And that's training. The training business is really that. Like now it's not just about obviously you got to know what you're doing, but there are a lot of people that don't know what they're doing and they got clients because they're personable. If you're personable and you know what you're doing, you're really the ultimate person that people want to train with. I think your point about basics is real important. So, I always tell, we talk about this all the time. Good quality reps, doing things the right way are a big deal. And, from the time I've been doing this for a long time, and I do this drill. Okay. It's the simplest change of direction drill. And Derek knows it because we do it in our warm up as our part of our warm up. And it's, it's cones at different edges, right? And you're just changing direction, playing off the outside foot and driving to the next direction. And you see kids, and it's such a simple drill. And now people are always like, this kid can't change it. I'm like, you do this drill every day, okay, for basically 2 minutes a day, okay, or every other day, and you'll see every kid at least get some level of base change of direction, know how to plant off the outside foot, drive into the opposite direction, and then all of a sudden they magically start to do it in gameplay and practice play, right? And then they get comfortable with it. Then they get better at sinking their hips when they do it, and they so on and so forth. But it's one of those things because I started doing that drill because people used to always just to drive me nuts. The coaches would be like, this kid can't change direction. I'm like, well, what are you doing to help him change direction? Well, some guys can and some guys can't. I'm like, no, here's the drill. And you do this even if you don't do it every other day, you do this drill for literally 2 minutes a day. And this person in 2 or 3 months will be changing direction. He may not be as good as the kid who is the elite athlete, but he's going to be functionally changing direction so he could do certain things. Talk about like how important basic drills are in quality reps in order for kids to get better.
I see it a lot. I mean, especially right now, like where I'm training, I guess this is like a popular time now that lacrosse season ended.
Right.
So I see a lot of lacrosse athletes. I'm working with one of the top guys in the world with lacrosse right now. But I see a lot of guys at the field, and like there was even a couple of football players over there. It's funny, like I see what they're doing. Like they're there to take that Instagram story to say like clocked in, rent's due, rent paid. But it's like, bro, without that camera, I just watched what you did for 45 minutes. You didn't do anything. You know what I mean? So like I'd rather see somebody come out, work the basics for 30, 45 minutes, and then go home or go to the weight room. Like it's really not that hard, but what it comes down to is just a day in and day out. Like that's hands down, like I owe a lot of my success to like Mike Smith and Rich Sadiv, because Mike's been doing this for like, I don't know, 20 years.
Since me.
Yeah. And I mean, Rich Sadiv, same thing. I mean, like those guys just showed me that like, just get up every morning, go to work, apply, bring that energy and do it again and again. And the same thing, like that applies to every concept in any industry. Like the consistency factor is so important, but like the quality reps is really what makes the difference, right? Like I'd rather see 10 quality reps over 100 like half-ass reps, no matter what it is, in the weight room, on the field, on the track. Like the carryover is tremendous when they're quality and done right. And like that's kind of like what I guess like the blessing in disguise for me was like starting at Parisi's, with youth athletes, like you got to be able to connect with like a 7-year-old and then be able to the same day or maybe the next hour connect with like a high school and then a college. So like I've really learned to simplify like my coaching cues to make it make sense, right? Like I remember when I was just getting started, like when it came to like sprint mechanics, I used to say like, thigh up, drive your knee. Then I realized like, you can say that 1,000 times. If they didn't get it the first time, they don't understand what you mean, or they may think it. So like now just understanding how to make it make sense. Like most of these athletes are visual learners. So you could just put them in the position that you're looking for without really having to overcoach it. You're going to have a much more successful time, like absorbing it and then applying it into whatever that drill may be. So like for me, like, learning from the best, but then learning how to broadcast it and like get it across that these athletes could actually understand it is the biggest thing. Like, cause I'm nowhere near the smartest coach out there. Like, I don't know the science nearly in depth to a lot of these guys, but I could connect at a whole different level than a lot of these guys. And that's, I think, a major difference in success. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Talk about what you do with pro athletes versus how you approach younger athletes, and like, what are the different kind of things you have to evaluate when you're trying to develop them when they're in different stages? So
overall, it's very similar. It's just the matter of like how much time, say, we're spending on like a foundational drill with a youth athlete versus like an NFL, right? Like a lot of the NFL guys are like the Ferraris, right? They're coming to me fast. They're coming to me strong. They're established. At this point, it's just like fine tuning them, right? So believe it or not, like a lot of these guys have never really even been exposed to like proper training until like maybe now or within like the last couple of years. And they were just kind of relying on overall like pure athleticism.
Right.
But now at this point, like with the high level, it's more about like communication. One, like what are they looking for? Like what do they think they need versus like when I look at them and evaluate them and what I think they need, and then kind of combining it. But at the same time, it's just like little tweaks that really will help them stay healthy and be able to withstand the whole season, right? Like a lot of guys will come to me like, hey, this is like the third time a reoccurring hamstring, some sort of soft tissue. And it's like a lot of this could be fixed and just, tweaking most of the time it's like their top end speed. So just their sprint mechanics in the top end. And once you kind of fine tune that from the weight room and then through the field, there's no more reoccurring injuries. And that's really what it comes down to. It's overall the same structure of workouts. It's just a matter of like the focus might be on the more advanced drills versus like the foundation. But no matter what, I'm always hitting those foundational drills, doesn't matter what level.
Right. And those guys on that level, that's what they're looking for, right? They're looking to increase their longevity. They don't want to be this, hey, I'm in the league for 3 years and now I'm out because I can't stay on a team because I pull a hamstring every camp, right? Or so those guys coming to you, or maybe they're just looking for a different viewpoint, right? Like they've been with a trainer, it's kind of the same thing. They're looking to shake things up, or even if it's guys that are just now coming to be a part of a new team, right? Like they just signed a new deal and they hear from one of their boys like, hey, there's a guy up there who can really help you, and then you can kind of run with it like that. So you have a lot of different approaches to working with those higher level guys. And with Mike as a mentor, we see it every spring when all those guys, as soon as their NFL seasons are over, they come back and they're working back with Mike again. That's just kind of the way he's always done it. And for you to just take that model and run with it, like, I think you can, just sky's the limit, really.
Yeah. Mike really laid the foundation of how to get things done. Like Mike was working UPS for years while training until he got to the point.
And like nobody knows that. 3 a.m.
no
every
joke.
day.
That's just not for everybody.
Wild.
And then like once he was able to, I guess, transition down to Florida and then take I guess he was more of the speed, the strength and conditioning coach and then the coaching job, he was able to kind of step away from that. And I did the same thing with bartending. Like when I first started with Parisi's in 2015, I was a full-time bartender. Back then I was working 80, 90 hours a week. Like people had no idea. Like from, Saturday morning, I'd be in the gym from say 7 a.m. to 4 in the afternoon. And then I'd bartend from 5 at night to 4 in the morning, open the bar from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m., do the same thing on Monday. Like I was shot. And then like, Rich Sadiv, who was the owner of Parisi's, like one day, like he just could see that I was like worn out. And he's like, all right, listen, like, let's sit down. Let's see how we can make you a full-time trainer. Financially, like I might not be able to match what you're making at the bar, but let's make it make sense. So this way you could really start to focus on it. And then from there, like once I was able to go all in with the training, that's really like what helped. So, luckily over here, like in the Jersey area, like we have 2 NFL teams right here. So like that definitely makes it a lot easier to get in front of these guys. But obviously you have to be established, and have a good reputation, because at the end of the day, like your Instagram could look great, but the only way you're going to grow in that world, to me, for long-term is word of mouth and referrals. And once you have that, like that's where everything kind of goes, the way you want it to go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you get to the point where you're getting referrals of people referring you, you're starting to really roll.
Yeah, that's where you're turning the page, really.
Talk about so we work for Parisi, they're kind of your mentors from a speed standpoint. What are some of the things that you do with your athletes that you want people to know that makes you different? Because speed, and you talked about this a little bit, and it might be other kind of drills, but in Instagram, Instagram's the number one, but it could be any of the platforms. But Instagram's the primary platform where trainers are posting stuff for the most part.
Correct.
You see crazy things, right? And then I wonder, like, it has to be frustrating. Like, when I was training athletes from 2000 in the speed and development world, from 2002 to 2012, that wasn't really like, it wasn't a big thing. You put stuff maybe on YouTube, but Instagram, Now you got guys that like they might be your client or somebody else's client one day. They see some video where a guy's doing all kinds of crazy drills with 9,000 cones and hurdles in there, and you're going through all these different things. And some kid who's a freak athlete looks really fast doing it, and they're like, I'm gonna go train there so I can be good like that kid is, right? What are some of the things that you do that you say, hey, these are some core principles that I have as far as my speed training that are getting my athletes better, that if you come here, you're going to get these things. It's not a gimmick.
I think, what I've really kind of developed, and it took me a while to understand like what it is. Like, there's so many trainers out there, speed coaches. Like, I really go above and beyond. Like, it's not just really about the training. And like my high school guys will see it, the parents of my youth athletes, and then my NFL guys. Like, when you say like you just come to the Giants, maybe you were down in Jacksonville, like if you need a realtor, if you need recovery, if you need this, like I'm going to connect those dots, right? And then like the 4 principles of what I stand on is like, fitness, mindset, routine, and community. Like those 4 things, are huge, meaning obviously you have to be putting into work in the gym from a physical standpoint, right? But your mindset, like, what the NFL guys you guys are asking about earlier, like that's really what it comes down to. Like their physical capabilities are sick already coming to me, but up here, they may still be like, a teenager at that point, right? So when you're 20 something years old and you just get paid multi-million dollars, like, like you can literally go out and do anything you want, but like what keeps you locked in to put the work in, stay out of trouble, don't get caught up in a different community, like I said, that you shouldn't be with. So like coming down to building that really strong routine and having that like winner's mentality, like that's what separates it. And I'll help all these athletes, even my adults. Like that's why adults love training with me, because I'll train them like a pro. Like that's my slogan. Like I'll train them and put them in front of these routines, challenge them with adversity, and teach them how to overcome it. Because I think that's the biggest thing now. Like you probably see it a lot in the camp world and whatnot, and the 7-on-7, like kids shut down when adversity is presented to them. They don't know how to handle it because
everybody wants to smoke till the smoke comes.
Yeah. So like teaching them just in a simple workout session, how to overcome that and be like, okay, like, I may suck at this, but that's just today. Give it a couple of weeks and we'll master it. But like, that's what really, I think, separates me, is that like, it's more than just the speed. It's more than just the strength. It's the mind, it's the body, and like literally connecting them with whatever they need, And like for me, like even like the NFL guys, like a lot of the, they only know what they know. So when it comes to me, like I have a very strong network when it comes to like the recovery and treatment side. And like that, I believe, doesn't matter what level, like, but your recovery and your treatment side is one of the most important factors in your longevity, in reaching your full potential, because so many people are so used to like ice stim, see you tomorrow. It's like, okay, you feel good for 15 minutes, but whatever that injury was, it's going to be there the next day. Right. So surrounding yourself with somebody who can actually address the issue, fix it. And then, from me, like, I don't like to step over that line. Like I'm not on the medical side. I'm not a therapist. So I communicate directly with them. We speak the same language. And then, it's just like that revolving circle of wellness to make sure they have everything they want or they need, really.
Is that surprising about how many of the elite athletes don't understand it? Like when you start talking about it, what is that education like for them? Because it's amazing. They're so athletic, right? And they've gotten a long way off of, working hard and being athletic. What is that like?
And they just don't understand, like, even how to take care of themselves on like level 101.
Yeah. I think, one thing I've learned is that like, so many athletes are easily persuaded, right? So like, you look at some of these guys, like I forget, like some of my closest guys that I've been with since college, like, they're 6'4", 330 pounds. When you look at them, they're like grown men. But then when you take a second back, like, they're in their low 20s. So like understanding, you got to take a second to remember, like, they're young. You got to help coach them. But, it's so easy when you become that guy, everybody gets in your ear. So understanding,
everybody wants a piece of you.
Yeah. So like who's legit, who's not, it's like, the saying, like, keep a small circle. It's very hard to do when you're being pulled in a million different directions. So I think understanding, like, Allen Robinson's like a perfect example. He's going into year 11. He's got a killer mentality. He knows his routine. He knows his body. He knows that, like, if he has like a steak on Thursday, how much his weight is going to fluctuate. He knows like what type of, there's a million different recovery tools, and not saying any are better or worse, but certain ones work better for this individual versus that one. So he understands what works for him, and just sticks to it. Right. Like, he may be doing, say, dry needling, but someone says like, oh, acupuncture. It's like, no, I'm good. The dry needling has been working for me. Like, stay in your lane. And that's like, to me, that's like everything. It's just understanding like how to cancel all the noise and understanding like whoever you're taking advice from, like, they're legitimate and they have your best interest in mind.
Right. They're not just trying to use your name to up their game so that they can now go and get more clientele. And I think that's what those guys will respect that and trust that. And now they'll always go back to you because they know you're not just using them for a paycheck or, something of that nature.
Yeah, that's definitely big. I mean, high school is where, and especially now, like all these NILs, like I was just talking to Mike, they just passed NIL in
Florida. Get ready for some sheer craziness.
Guys turning into a CEO versus like a head coach. You got to adjust.
Going to run a lot of good coaches out of the game, bro, because a lot of it, and we've seen it now with, college guys going to the NFL. And, we talk about this all the time, that this is a big piece of it. Even in recruiting, right? Like, these guys are walking in the building, not worrying about what their education is going to be. They're worrying about how much money they're going to get from an NIL. And it's hard to keep these guys grounded and understanding. Like, you really just kind of want to give them the education and hope that they make the right decision. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to listen to you in terms of that, right? And it's a whole different world. It opens up a crazy market down there. And, he's going to have to deal with it as one of the highest, best programs down there. And especially with a high level recruit, like he's got the number 2 quarterback in the 2026 class in his building. And, if that's not a thing that's going to be an issue, it is, so it's just wild.
Yeah. I mean, I like it because the three, like, we know how hard it is to make it to one as a D1 athlete, to let alone be an NFL athlete. So I like to see these kids to be able to get some sort of financial support. I mean, Derek, like, I used to save lunch money to pay Mike for training. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
I remember. Yeah, dude. I mean, look, we were like, and we were talking. Mike was mad even taking money. Like, we just have to throw him a 20 and be like, take $20 at least for this. We got 3-4 days of a session.
Yeah.
But and Dave and I, we talk about this all the time. The amount of money that parents throw at, trainers or this, and it's like, please just go to the guys that are doing the right thing. And so many of them just go to the guys with the most clicks, or like we talk about all the time. We go on Instagram and guys are doing 1,000 like cone drills, and it's like, bro, are you really gonna release off the ball like that in a game? Like, that ain't gonna work. But this guy's preaching all this stuff, you're paying all this money. It's so hard. It's a crazy world.
I like to say that the cone drills is how you can move really quick and go absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that cartoon with fast moving feet. You're not going anywhere,
Oh, it's great. You just went back and forth.
Right. But it shows. I mean, look, you just said it, right? Like, you're at the field, you're training one people, and then at the other end, you're seeing these athletes that are out there taking more pictures or spending more time on their phone than they are actually working out. But like, you go to their Instagram page and they got it like they worked out for like, 2.5 hours going hard. And it's like, man, it's all smoke and mirrors. At some point, like, you're going to have to line up and you're going to have to execute. You're going to have to do things. And that's going to separate you from whether or not you're just that guy or whether you want to be a real dude. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things.
Like, even for me, right? Like, and I guess I learned this from Mike. Like, I didn't never really worried about social media until I got to a certain point, like, I worried, like, my thing was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on the training and let the athletes speak for me. And then it got to a point where it's like, okay, like, I tell this to everybody, like, if I hire a new coach, whatever, like, I remember my first Friday, I had like 16 sessions in a row. That's 16 1-hour sessions straight. Thursday night, I was like bragging, like, oh, I can't wait. By the end of Friday, I was like, shoot, like, that was cool, but I don't ever want to do that again. So now, like, how do I maximize like my income without having to train as much? And that's when I really started to make that shift to like the business side versus like the trainer's mentality, right? So then I went from like training athletes to then training coaches or coaching coaches.
Right.
So it kind of took a step up. And like, from the Parsi side, I learned the training, no doubt. Like that's where the foundation, like most of my success of the training came from. My last 18 months or so with Iron Culture, I learned a lot more on the business side. And now being independent, I'm able to apply all this and then take the good, what I liked, what I didn't like, and kind of put together like my system that's working for me. So it's like, it all comes together, but you just got to have the open mindset with it, which is good.
Yeah, it's how you can reach more people, and it does become tough in training because I remember that, like, okay, you go and you do now you're doing if you're doing 40 sessions a week, right? Like that's like maxed out to the brim, okay, and then you look at the math on, you're like, oh, and you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah, you're like,
I've gotta find a better way. Like
this,
I'm doing every session, and this is what your paycheck's good, but you're like, wait a minute, how am I going to get to the next level, right? And the only way to get to the next level is start to like train coaches, develop your own system, your team, your online pro. There's a whole bunch of different ways you could do it, but there's all different. But you have to leverage some of those avenues at least in order to be able to do it. I used to have this. I don't know if you know him, but one of the guys I used to send my pro guys to when I was in Asia, this guy, Justin Cavanaugh, we had him on, Dirk. And Justin is now like, now he still has his training facility in Virginia, and he still trains like a few pro athletes, still has the high school kids, but he developed like his system where he had guys underneath him. And then he now mentors, like he has this, he's always on this, like, he's always talking at like these different conferences with respect to speed development or leadership development or developing your system. And he's like mentoring coaches, you know what I mean? And that's how he's really kind of grown. That's one way he's really grown his own business. But I remember me and him used to have these conversations when he was training some of my pro guys. And we would talk about it. I'm like, how are you going to, get to the next, like he had a facility, he's doing what, but he's like, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking he wrote a book and then he was able to leverage it to speaking and all that kind of stuff. And he did it. Like he literally did it. Like he got himself out of the facility, you know what I mean? And it wasn't just about the facility and the training part, and still has the training, but he's able to leverage all these different avenues to become successful. And it's, I think you're on the right path from that standpoint, because that's how you can reach more people, right? You ultimately it's about how are you going to create more people to be successful, and you'll have your group of guys that you want to train because that's the guys you want to be, like, hey, this is part of what I need to be able to do, but you also want to have your team. And then managing that team becomes the harder thing over the years. I'm sure Bill Parisi could probably tell you about it better than anybody. Because he's managed it for a long time, and he's gone through. I know Bill very well, and he's gone through the highs and lows, and investors and franchising and developing coaches, and now he speaks obviously all over the place, all over the world on training, and so even a guy like Bill Parisi, who's one of the literally founding fathers of the speed stuff. Had to get himself out of the facility, right? And in order to get himself to be successful. So he's a great model from that standpoint. And everybody has a different path, but ultimately that's what it has to become. What are some of the aspects that like you see yourself kind of really starting to drive towards as you continue to evolve your system? What are things that you really like within this business that you want to continue to grow?
I'm at a point now where I'm looking at the next step, whether, most likely going to be my own facility. I'm pretty close to securing a location to open that. And really the purpose is
tough.
It's tough, but like in 2019, for example, like when I was training, I was in the process to becoming a fireman in Patterson. Like that's, to 99% of the world, you take that job, that's, you retire after 25 years. It's a 6-figure job, pension, benefits. Like when I got that call and I said, no, thank you. Like I went through the whole process and I was like, this just isn't what I want to do. Like financially it might make sense, but like, it's not what I want to do. It's not what's going to make me happy. So I turned it down, and like my family like wanted to kill me. Like, are you like, so like looking at it, looking at what I'm doing now, like I wake up every day, right? Like, I just got back from Yosemite. I was on a 5-day trip hiking with my girl and her sister and her boyfriend. Like, a lot of people when they come home
got
from
a little grounding, man. You went out West Coast and like got that like, ooh.
But when people come back from vacation, it's like, oh shit, back. Like me, I come back, I'm ready to go. Like I'm good for the next 6 months, and then I'll take a little time off and like you said, like get grounded and reset. But like I wake up every day, like, yeah, some days are harder than the other, but I love what I'm doing. So for me, like what I want to do is kind of like what Parisi's did for me. And like, Rich Sadiv is the guy that interviewed me, and I have an associate's degree. I didn't have much experience at the time, but he chose me over other applicants because of like my energy, and he could sense like the passion behind this, that this meant a lot to me. So I want to be able to provide similar opportunities to people like me, in the future, whether it's like lending a helping hand to the athletes that's in our facility, or to be able to take a chance on somebody, giving them an opportunity to pursue a career, whether or not they have a college degree, or if they do, or, whatever their upcoming may be, but just allow them to kind of really reach their full potential. Like that's what I would like to do. And then, who knows what other avenues open up. Like there's so many different avenues now that like this platform can lead for me, but that's like really like my main focus is looking to do, like be able to have a spot that has great reputation that parents can bring their athletes to, and not have to think twice about what's going on from the training standpoint. Like, is the trainer on their cell phone the whole time? Are they there? Like, the reliability and the reputation will be everything like going forward. And that's really what I stood on, but that's like what it is going forward.
And that's a big deal. I think when you're in this space, it's about what you're given to everybody else. And when you're choosing some of these, Derek's probably dealt with it. Yeah, I know I've dealt with it because I was in. This is a long time ago, Joey. So I'm taking you back a long, long time. So I was in. I got my master's degree. I was in the tech field. It was wildly successful, really quick, really quick. And when I went and changed and went into training, and then originally I was doing training and
right. Like you and Dave had
originally I was a trainer,
dude.
I was a speed trainer. That's what I was.
He worked his way up to having a facility.
I used to have. I had at one, when I first started in 2002, I was running 20 speed camps around the country, just speed training. That was back when you could really do that. Like times have changed, and like, speed training was new. Like there was like Paris, there was only a few people, so we were running them all over the country, 2002, 2003, 2004. And then I opened up a facility in 2004 in Wyckoff, purposely 2 blocks from where Bill was. And the theory was people kind of knew, because in Bergen County, I was a well-known athlete, so people, my theory was, well, some people aren't going to like Bill Parisi's training. So that's just how it is, even though he's great. But some people are going to be like, well, I need more. I want to, the grass is always greener, right? So the grass is always greener, drove around Wyckoff, showed up at our place. That's how we built our clientele. Basically, the grass was always greener, right? And then once we developed our clientele, then someone else opened on a block on the other corner and felt, okay, if they don't like Bill and they don't like Dave, they'll take. And that's kind of how it started really, really to blossom all over Bergen County. And then now it's, I'm talking New Jersey, but like in California, the same thing happened. In Texas, same thing happened. And, but that's how it really, it was really, so I did training for years. And then we started running the camps and showcases in 2005. And that took off, like, I didn't even expect it to take off. It took off like gangbusters. And that basically became our thing for basically up until COVID, 15 years, and now we've evolved, like this channel and what we're doing with like flag football and our 7-on-7. Like we weren't doing that 10 years ago, so you don't know where it's going to take you. And that's what I think is cool about when you start to do your own thing, right? You start to, you have your own thoughts about how you want to do it. And you're not just, I say this, you're not just a slave to how much money you can make. Now, ultimately, you got to make money, right?
Yeah,
like you got to be, financially successful at some point, or you got to do well enough to be able to support your family. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to continue to do it. But if you are able to do that, you wake up every day like excited about what you're doing. Now, there are some people that are excited about, going in and doing finance. That's great. That's not for me. You know what I mean? There are some people that are excited probably about being firemen. That wouldn't be something that was for me. I'm excited about what I'm doing every day, just like you're excited and they're excited about what you're doing every day. And that becomes your passion. You drive that. And ultimately, you will become successful because you'll continue to want to find the paths, even if your market changes, even if, your top guys somehow decided, oh, I'm going to go over here, right? It had nothing to do with you. You're going to continue to figure out, okay, I like this. I like that. I'm going to build business with this. I'm going to build business with that. And you'll figure it out because you have a desire in that world to be successful because you enjoy it. Ultimately, if you choose something just because you're going to get a few more dollars, I mean, you wake up 25 years, I'm 50. If I woke up, I probably could be worth tenfold, but I would be drudging myself to New York City every single day, not looking at it like you are and enjoying the view.
Yeah.
Up on the subway. I mean, I did it when I was doing. You're on the subway, you're on the train, sitting in 2 hours traffic. Come back, you don't see your kids till 7 o'clock. You know what I mean? And by the way, they're going to bed at that time anyway, right? So then now for some people, that's great. Everybody has their own path. Guys that like that, that's what they should do. But for me, and for guys like us, like we're seeking something different, right? And that's I always thought that was the beauty of the original part of the trainer's path. It doesn't mean in the long run that there are guys that want to train all the time, and there are guys that want to do, but that the training opened my mind to all the things that could be possible, right? Like it's amazing because when you're bartending, right, you're doing your personal, but you're locked into like something you have to do. It's a task. Training starts once you start training athletes, you're trying to figure out how to better them, and ultimately you end up trying to figure out how to better yourself because that's the culture, right? You're trying to, how can I get this guy to be the best he can be, or the girl, or whatever it is, to be the best that they can be, right? And ultimately, you're saying, how could I strive to get them to be the best they can be if I'm not trying to figure out the way that I could be the best for myself to be? Because if I'm not,
that's everything,
right?
Like for me, like looking back at it now, I started in 2015, 2014, but 2019 is when I really started to apply the same concepts to my athletes, to myself. And once I was able to lock that in, because, at the time, Parsi Speed School was in the same gym as a Crunch Fitness. We bought Crunch Fitness and took that over. So at that time, we went from like renovating, opening a new gym, running Parisi's. At the time, I was partners with Matt Sims with the Sims Complete QB. Yep. So my hands were full. I knew, I was like, listen, if we're going to do this, like I got to be 100% locked in. So I got into a new routine. And since then, like that has allowed me to escalate. But now, like, understanding that like any person you meet on a day-to-day basis could be somebody that like makes that overnight success, right? Like this year was my hands down biggest NFL offseason. And it really came down to one guy who facilitated all, David Sills, who's now with the Broncos. They
signed him. That's awesome.
Yeah, so he was with them last year. He's with them now, but like he was the guy that, one of my other guys, Matt Pert, who was with the Giants, they were teammates. He recommended me. I connected with David, and then David opened the doors. I ended up having Saquon for like a month or like a few weeks this offseason before he went down to Philly. Alan I've had for a few years, but he was a referral. I had a few guys this year that like really made my off season, but this is like what kind of like you guys said in the beginning, like people look at it as like I just took off now, but it's all because of like one person. So like Bill Parisi taught me very well, like in the beginning, like, I used to worry about getting a million athletes to train. He's like, Joe, just focus on the person in front of you. And then like that one will turn to two to four. I know it sounds like so classic, but like you apply that, like that's what really helps you take off. And now like other business ventures are coming together because of these connections, and that's what it's all about.
And I know David Sills very well. David Sills, I know his father very well. So when we used to run, we ran. I don't know, I'm trying to think of the year. It must be 09 or 010, 2010. But David Sills was originally at a school called Red Lion Academy, and we hosted our showcase there. And Mr. Sills was one of the ones facilitating that, and his coach at the time, which is now the guy's now at Newman Goretti in Philadelphia, but his coach at the time, and then he had Easter Christian High School, which was father funded the high school, which had all.
Scrimmaged him at Boston. He was, I think, a junior.
Yeah, played against you. Oh, you guys played against him. Okay.
Yeah, we scrimmaged him preseason in 2012. I think he was maybe a junior at Eastern. He had already had the offer, right? Like, because he got an offer in 8th grade, and it was like a big deal. He was playing QB. Yeah, he was a stud.
Yeah,
but the school, it was like, they were trying to do like almost like an IMG, I guess.
They were. It wasn't really an IMG. It was really more for that group of kids, and then hopeful that it would turn into something long term. But it really ended up kind of being more for David's group and the group of guys around them. I think it lasted for maybe a couple of years after David was gone. But his father was really instrumental in that whole process. Father's a great guy. And David was always a great kid. Like, he really, they adopted a kid that was on their team. He went and played at Mississippi State. He has the Sills last name now. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, like they're a great family. And Sills was in high school. I remember this. So like when we would have at our camps, we'd have these 7-on-7s at the end of our camps. Like, this was never done before, and now it's done all the time. But back then, like, we would do our camp, and then we would break them up into teams. So we had different color uniforms, and we'd break them up into teams, and we would have a 7-on-7 tournament with, like, let's say there was 150 kids there, break them out into 8 teams. So I was coaching, I think, Sills teams once or twice, but Sills was such an amazing athlete. He broad jumped, I think at 16 years old, like 10 feet, or maybe over 10. It might have been over 10 feet. And he was a heck of an athlete. So I was surprised that when quarterback didn't go exactly the way that, his career from that standpoint, when he transitioned to receiver and he was immediately a star. I remember him athletically. He ran a really good 40 in high school. He had a really good vertical jump and broad jump. He was like an athlete, Yeah. And back then, he looked like a surfer. I don't know. I haven't seen him in a long time. I don't know. But back then, he used to have like long blonde hair.
Fat boy.
Yeah,
got that fat boy Morristown look.
Yeah. But you wouldn't have thought that like he would do all the things he could do. I like because he looked like he came out off a surfboard. You know what I mean? But he was great and really. I remember obviously as a kid, was really respectful.
Same. Exactly.
I'm sure he's the same way still.
Yeah. Good.
He's a great individual, that's for sure.
So it's amazing how all these things are interconnected. How can people reach out to you? How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Joey Sundays everything. Joey Sundays on Instagram, joeysundays.com. Very simple.
Joey, I want to see if it comes up real quick.
That's smart marketing, by the way.
Joey Sundays.
Oh wow, that's amazing! Listen. Have you got to go in?
You got to file something.
I got it all filed, baby.
Oh, you know, yeah, good man.
Got it. Come on, it's gonna be a household name soon.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And maybe next time we have you on a podcast, we'll spend 30 minutes just talking about Joey Sundays.
It's gonna be longer than that.
That's what I tried to say. I said Joey Sundays in itself could be an entire episode, But I gave you a little plug. I said it was kind of funny. Actually, I said, like Joey was younger than me. I said, but like because he was like just around us and like good at whatever. I said he had like the 3rd most rushing yards on my team senior year because he got like default playing time, and it was just like, oh hell, like I was telling Dave, like I said, like we're in a state semifinal playoff game, and this kid's carrying the ball in the 4th quarter, like holy hell.
I was just at Butler. There's a new kid, an 8th grader coming out, Ryder Higby. He's a pretty good athlete, a really good athlete, but one of the kids coming out of Butler. So I actually went down there. I haven't been there in so long.
Oh,
you
saw the blue turf.
I remember walking off our old field at halftime and Mickens and Ed Primavera walking up like, yo, literally walked up behind me like, yo, Taggart. I was like, what's good? They're like, don't shit the bed. You're starting second half. I was like, oh my God. And then I balled out, but that was because Potasnik, Tommy was in Poland. Remember, but I ended up playing like every single game because we were blowing them out. But as a freshman, I had like ridiculous amount of playing time. I was like, damn, this is crazy. But I'll never forget that. Hey, don't shit the bed.
That's crazy. Yeah, because we we talk about that era and Dave, like the guys that were at Saddlebrook, who was the #1 seed that year, right? Glen Rock kind of like upset them. Like our paths would have totally crossed with Dave's, and we would have been like in the same world. Like we were one game away from that. We had a guy on a couple weeks ago, DJ Nymphius, and he was coaching at Glen Rock at the time. And when Dave was like, "Oh, Derek's my guy," he's like, "I know Derek, and I know Butler, and I don't want to talk about it." He's like, and It was like it just all comes back. And but that's crazy. I know. Yeah, you went back there. It's a totally different place, dude.
And I remember, I really aged myself. I was like, dude, I said to Ryder, I was like, I think this field house, I think I was the first, when we were in high school, we were the first ones to have that.
My year was the first year to have it.
How Glen Rock feels about us, that's how Booton was for us.
And these guys, I just talked about that a little bit too, with Coach Mick, and I've had Scotty Van Zyl on, right? Like guys from those older teams and all that kind of stuff. And, the one thing, it's just a different place, right? It's just totally different type of Group 1 football. And Dave understands Group 1 football in Saddlebrook. There are years you're going to be good. There's years you're going to be bad, but it's that consistency. But just how the whole town is like a cult, I tell them. It's just it's literally like Varsity Blues or a Friday Night Lights. It's that's what it's all about. That's what these people live for. And then to see guys like us that have branched out and done different things, it's not many guys that are doing stuff like us can go back to our high school and see the same coaches.
Yeah.
Now the question is, which character were each of you in Varsity Blues? Derek, who are you in Varsity Blues?
No comment. Joey may have actually been the same guy.
You guys might have been the same guy. What was his name?
I mean, I know for me, I'm wearing
Tweeter, right?
Too.
You guys are both tweeter, huh?
I think to a different, maybe, yeah.
I mean, what's the Billy Bob, right? I was the skinny Billy Bob too, maybe.
That too, maybe. I think you had a nice little mix of both, kind of. That's but we'll leave it at that. Let's just say Joey was an excellent, how you always got that younger guy that hangs with the crew. That's
right.
Willing to do maybe some things that others aren't. Let's just say Joey was always really good for that, and you knew that if he was gonna go after it, it was gonna get done, and you just had to make sure that he was somewhere at 7 a.m. that he was supposed to be, and if not, you had to go grab him, and it would be okay.
Always there.
That's great.
9 out of 10 times.
That's it, buddy.
That's great. That's great stuff. Well, on that note, we'll let you run. Easy. I Googled it, so I know it's easy as pie. I typed in Joey Sundays.
Smart.
Comes up right away, so you can't miss it. Make sure
no fancy spelling, no underscores, just Joey Sundays.
Like I said, Dave, we talk about how many times do we talk about it? We're looking for a kid, and we're like, dude, I can't even find your stuff because of, Mad Dog 22. Dude, put your name there. So it's simple marketing skills, dude.
Well, that was funny. I mean, half my athletes, it took them 2-3 years to realize my last name was Taggart. They thought Sundays was my last name.
Yeah, everybody thought your name was.
Yeah, Mom, this is Joey Sundays. It's all right, my name's Joe Taggart, but
Yeah, but
Sundays, we're good.
I remember people. I remember guys were like, "Yo, who's Joey Sunday?" I'm like, "Taggart." They're like, "No, his last name is Sunday." I'm like, No, like it's not. Like
Yeah.
that's a calling. Like, okay, but like it is
Well, we know
not.
if
Like
you're in a Hollywood movie, the credits are going to be under Joey Sunday. So it's
100%.
it's
No
not going to
doubt.
be Joey Taggart. It's going to be Joey Sundays.
It's your alias
And
for your
that
hotel.
sounds like what was the show that used to be on HBO where the guy went to Hollywood?
Entourage.
Entourage. It sounds like an Entourage episode, like where you're the star. You know, you're
That's pretty much that's pretty much how we lived our college years, or like that's kind of what it was, to be honest.
the show that show represents all the Butler stars.
Pretty much in a way, shape, or form, give or take a little bit. Like I'm sure we weren't working with as much, clout as they were, but we got it done, whether it was, whatever it took.
We're getting that clout now. We'll be all right.
That's it, buddy.
All right, Coach. We'll let you go. It's great having you.
Appreciate you, man. Like I said, I appreciate you taking the time. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to get you on here to talk about some stuff, especially since we kind of just, we're kind of, been gearing towards a little bit of the strength and conditioning stuff these last couple episodes and whatnot. So I appreciate you coming on, man. Continue to do what you're doing, man. It's really awesome.
Appreciate it, fellas. Thank you for your time.
All right, buddy. Talk to you.
All right, later, guys.
That was great. That was great time. Great
wow,
time,
bro.
A lot of good stuff.
I'll tell you what's interesting too, though, is I think like that, like because he still like trains across like the entire gamut, right? Like he still does like, he does like little mom groups, and he does NFL guys, and then he does like middle school and high school guys. I think it really gives him like you said, a different perspective on the approach to everything, right? And then that more personal side where, we've seen it when you go like a little bit above and beyond, like people like they'll flock to that, and like, hey, I'm getting more of like this off the field than I am on the field. I think he does a great job balancing that, which is, like I said, like something Mike always did, right? Like we were out there training, but he was also out there like being a shrink for us, right? Like at the same time. And I think that's a huge thing, especially for your higher level guys, right? Like maybe they just need a guy to puke this stuff all out to,
right?
And he can kind of hit on both of those things, while taking them to that next level.
Derek, I want to show you something that we're launching, and this is the first time showing it, but it's kind of in a soft launch mode, but you'll see, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about it after we're off, but let's see if I can find it. All right, here we go. All right, can you see it?
Yeah. So, oh boy, we're going into supplements.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, here we go. So we got supplements, our own branded. It's called Beast Elite, and all natural supplements, not non-GMO.
Oh yeah, we got the whole thing.
Oh gamut. Yep. So
all right.
So we're going in there, and we'll start to continue to build. We got to grow that part. Well, I'll start to grow, but yeah, that's we're
that's awesome.
Keep working different things that can help what we're doing. So. But that's
pretty much the name of the game. Anything we can do to kind of like supplement, no pun intended, and help guys out to kind of get there and go. Like that's really what it'll take.
Absolutely. So,
awesome.
All right, we'll get off. Great podcast. That was a great guest. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, dude. A lot of fun.
If anything, a lot of these guys, if anything, they have character, right? So everybody's got their own.
Honestly, that's what makes it best. Obviously, the knowledge is great. But and we want that obviously because that's what we're trying to help people with. But you got to have the personality with it to go with it. So
right, and I do remember him doing that though, dude. Like he would go to Parsi, he would train all day, then he'd go work at, I think he was like bartending at like Applebee's, bro, and he would be there like all night. He'd like sleep on in like one of the freaking booths, and then wake up and go open up Parisi. And it was like, dude, like you're gonna be running on zero really soon. And then he kind of, like you said, like took it to that next level. And then to turn down being a firefighter, like you gotta at least, like the passion is gonna, you know what I mean?
Gotta be there.
100%. But awesome, appreciate it.
All right.